Right, we're going to have a chat about the FX6 and the new firmware update version 5 that actually dropped. But if you don't own the FX6, just stay tuned because we got to talk about firmware updates in general, and Sony seem like they're actually moving in the right direction. So let's get into the video. What's going on, my friends? I hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. If you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing. Now, Sony have released the new version 5 firmware update for the Sony FX6, and this is really good, but it's quite minuscule, but it is just enough that they're moving in the right direction. And that's probably one of the biggest things I want to talk about, but we'll go through the firmware updates first, and then we'll talk about firmware updates that will leak down into the other Sony cameras, which is pretty exciting. Now, if you own an FX6, it is more than likely that you've actually done this kind of firmware update before. But if you haven't actually done a firmware update on your FX6 before, or any other Sony camera, I'm just going to quickly run through it. So go to the website and download the firmware. Make sure you don't have any other duplicates of that actual file name in your computer. So make sure you delete it first, because it should actually be bodydata.dat, and you actually need to copy this directly onto an SD card or a Type A card. Now I put it directly onto my Type A card, and I put it into the bottom slot, which is slot B. Okay, I don't know why, don't get me started, but it's slot B at the bottom. So make sure you go into that, go into your settings, into maintenance, and then it will actually show you where you need to update. Literally click that, but make sure you have a full charge of battery or connect it directly to mains. Go through that process. It should take about 2 to 3 minutes. Let it go through its process. It'll reboot back up. Go back into that maintenance setting and see if it's actually updated, which it most likely would have. Now, if you do have any issues or queries, please contact Sony support. First of all, they've added 1.5 times anamorphic desqueeze in camera. Now, they initially released, was it 1.3 and 2 times anamorphic desqueeze? And it's kind of like 1.3 I can understand, but 2 times anamorphics is kind of very high end. There aren't really many 2 times anamorphic lenses that are in the budget realm, except for I think Blazar do, is it the Blazar Remus that are 2 times anamorphic? Otherwise you've got the Vazen anamorphics, but they're quite expensive. And majority of the affordable ones are within 1.3, 1.5, 1.6 ish sort of range, and 1.3 and 2 times anamorphic desqueeze just wasn't enough. But now they've added 1.5, which kind of is smack bang in the middle. But in saying that as well, majority of FX6 users will actually have an external monitor, which you can desqueeze pretty much any custom range, whatever you want. But this is only, useful for if you go between the 2 screens like I do. I actually look at my top screen, but then sometimes I'll look at the side screen with the FX6, and I don't know, I just go between the 2. And if you are the person that actually has no monitor and just goes, quite bare bones with the FX6, I mean, this is very handy. Now, the second one, they've actually added some more profiles when it comes to focus breathing compensation with some of the other lenses, because all the Sony lenses weren't added, but I think they've added a couple more in the higher end. I think maybe it's the 100 to 400 GM and the 200 to 600. I think, don't quote me on that. I mean, I have to look that up. Yeah, I was correct. It is the 100 to 400 and the 200 to 600 mil lens for that breathing compensation, which will definitely shoot wildlife and sports videographers. Now, they have actually integrated a very similar process like the Venice cameras when it comes to LUTs. This is something that I don't necessarily do on my FX6. I pretty much just shoot majority of the time in log. My screen will actually have a Rec 709 conversion light, just the basic Rec 709, just so I can see the basic colors, because my color grading happens in post-production, and that's when I have the most amount of flexibility. But if you are that kind of person that likes to have, LUTs in camera so you can actually see what it potentially may actually look like, then this is a really good option for you guys. Now, there are a couple of small updates which I will go through. It says it's added support for the new preset 709 tone base look. It also adds support for the area indication setting when using the multi-matrix correction feature. It adds 23.98 PSF, which is progressive segmented frame, through the support of the SDI output. It adds the ability to use multi-selector to choose focus target for real-time tracking and autofocus feature, which is actually quite nice. And it adds a couple of little settings in the status screen. It improves adjustment range of matrix/multi-matrix when using the user base look and when setting the target display to HDR. And the last one, they've actually added a little bit more features with that monitor and control app. Now that is one app that I don't necessarily use, or pretty much I never used with the FX6. It's not really something that fits within my workflow, having, you know, a screen with my, you know, attached to my FX6 with my phone. I have external monitors, but I also have an external feed that can go directly to another monitor. So, but if you are someone that utilizes, you know, an iPad, if you are someone that utilizes an iPhone and you want to be able to monitor it or give it to a client, I mean, this is a pretty good thing, especially when it comes to the FX6. You are in the professional realm, so giving a monitor to a client is definitely a really good option, and I know is happens quite a lot, so that is great. Now we have to talk about Sony and the direction they're actually going with these firmware updates. They seem to start to pick up, and they're picking up a lot of traction. They actually are bringing firmware updates to a lot of cameras, which is really good. I literally think we won. That is amazing that Sony are actually doing this, because that was their one Achilles heel, that they weren't releasing enough firmware updates, and people were getting really annoyed, and myself included. But I am not an A7S III user, I'm not an A1 user. Those people were getting the most annoyed, but those updates are coming, and I'm just thankful that Sony are actually listening to us and giving us these firmware updates. So hopefully these ones will trickle down into the FX3 and FX30, because a 1.5 times anamorphic squeeze, like I said, is extremely important for me, because I shoot on anamorphics quite a lot, and having it desqueezed in camera does help if you don't utilize an external monitor. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to read them and see what you guys think about this whole firmware update thing and the direction that Sony is going in. But thanks for watching, guys, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, let's get it.